What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and we are going to be talking Week 2 of the Overwatch League playoffs on this episode. Before we dive into that, I'd like to thank everybody out there on YouTube. Thank you very much for all of your support that you've been giving me. If you're new to the program, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, and hit that alert bell so you can be updated on when I drop Overwatch League content, which is anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week, depending on what we got going on. All right, so we've eliminated half of the field. We are down to the final 10 teams on both sides altogether, APAC and NA. We're going to jump into the NA side first because we have the most amount of games and things to talk about. And then we'll talk about APAC, and then we will call it a show. So let's talk about the matches we got coming up on Friday afternoon first. We'll talk about the two losers bracket matches that we got, and then we'll talk about what we have on tap on Saturday and Sunday. So the first match we have for the weekend is going to be the Atlanta Reign taking on the Florida Mayhem down in the losers bracket. This one, I think a couple of weeks ago, I would have said Florida would have been a shoo-in to just bury them and put them away. After seeing Atlanta play in the last couple of matches, well, I guess maybe not the shock match. The shock just boomed them. But them beating Paris, I thought was a pretty good indication that they're firing a little bit better than they were in the regular season. I think that they might need to work on their comps a little bit, but they've had a week to mess around and try different stuff and see where they're at. They've been in predominantly rush comps against Paris and San Francisco, rush, brawl, whatever you want to call it. Reinhardt kind of things. They looked good doing it, but I just think it's really counterable right now. And I don't think that it's the best comp on paper, but as far as the way their team plays, it might be the best comp for them. And sometimes that works better than what everybody else is doing or the meta or whatever the common practice is that seems to be, this is better than that kind of a situation. If you run something better, you probably have a better chance than running something you're not good at. But they have had time to work on stuff. They played what they were comfortable with, and they looked decent enough. Yeah, the shock did what they do. They came out and they were, raring to go and just took it to them. But in this match, now we had the Mayhem that lost to the Valiant and then buried the Gladiators. They looked really just kind of okay against the Valiant. They didn't look great. They cleaned some things up against the Gladiators. They looked a lot better. They had BQB playing on high damage heroes. He's just really good at those. And they had Yaki playing some of the like the Sombra and stuff like that, and busting out Genji. Much like I said about the Reign, sometimes you have to bust out a comfort pick that might not be good on paper, but you play to a reasonably high level. And they did the Nano Blade thing against the Gladiators. It worked. Would it be my optimal? No, but you know what? If it works and you get a win, that's all that matters right now, is to stay alive. And they did that, stayed alive. The Gladiators didn't really give them much trouble. I mean, they did okay. The way I see this going, a lot of people are picking Florida up front, saying this is a lock. I'm not one of them. Florida's my team. I'm going to pick them anyway. But I do see a scenario where the Reign can beat Florida with these rush comps. The way some of the guys that have been playing that were missing for a good portion of the season or underperforming, they're performing at a higher level right now. They can run Masa on Lucio. Dogman looks good. I think there are many situations where Atlanta can take advantage of what Florida does poorly, force them into things, and just beat them in a close match. I think it would be, if Atlanta won, it would be definitely a 3-2. If it gets there, Florida is not good in those scenarios. They tense up. I don't know what it is. BQB, please, for the love of God, hit Q. I'm still stuck on that, I know. Because the Valiant, man, that just burns me still. To a week later, it's still bothering me. Well, less than a week, but the Florida needs to do what they did to the Gladiators. They need to come out, play those comps that they're comfortable on, get BQB in a situation where he's playing Ash or high damage Widowmaker. Whatever the hero is that is the primary damage dealer, he's going to be good at taking care of business on that. Yaki, you can stick in a varied amount of heroes. You can put him on Sombra, Genji. You can even put him on, Mei, if you want to run Reaper Mei. I just think there's a lot of things he can do as far as that goes. So I just want to see BQB in the position on the hit scan to be taking care of business. I worry once again about if you're running stuff where you need a Lucio, running Chris on that. But overall, I think they should win this. Close 3-1. Like I said, if it gets to a tied game and we go into a fifth map, I don't like their chances just by the way they've been playing in these matches, where they keep it close and they don't finish. They're waiting for the perfect opportunity instead of a small opportunity to do something with ultimates or just going in and taking a fight or something like that. They're very pensive, and I want to see them up the aggression and just finish teams off like they did against the Gladiators. They didn't let the Gladiators have a chance. But in a close scenario, if they go up 2-0, there's no guarantees that they're going to take it all the way home just by the past performance they've had in the last month or so, with just letting teams get back into the mix. And you don't want to do that with Atlanta. They have a lot of good players. If you get them down, you want to just finish them off. And Florida has to do that. If they let Atlanta breathe or get back into the match in any sense, they're in big trouble. This is not time for perfection. You are in an elimination type scenario. Do what you have to do to win the match. Sometimes it's not the perfect opportunity. It is just an opportunity. One other thing on Florida that I really want them, it's paramount, is ult economy. They had some bad situations against the Valiant, and I'm going on the Valiant game more than the Gladiators. Even though I was high on the Gladiators, they just didn't have it. And Atlanta and the Valiant are more on the same level as far as skill-wise right now. Obviously, they're all in the bottom bracket. But I want their ult economy to be a little bit better. If you're running the Sombra, farm your ult, use your ult, at a good time. Don't do the ranked version of it where you run in with EMP and everybody on your team's already dead. Welcome to my world last night. That's all I really have to say on this match. I am going to take Florida, but like I said, there is a chance that Atlanta could come back and maybe not come back. Atlanta has a good chance of winning this match for sure. All right, next match. This match, I don't know what to think about the Valiant in this. The Justice are on fire. They are just, everybody is playing at the level we thought they should be playing at. Aim God, Arc, Janu, Stitch. Stitch maybe even is up to his performance here. He's absolutely one of the keys why they're winning. Yeah, you can say Decay, but Stitch is doing work, and it's paying dividends for the Justice. And Decay, obviously, great Zarya player from back in Apex, or back in Contenders, I should say, doing what he's doing on Zarya right now. It's just filthy. It's a different style of Zarya, but still, he is pretty proficient at the hero, so it's really hard to see any flaws they have right now, which is something you did not say about Washington previously. Obviously, they have upped their game, and we talked about it on the review show about, my thoughts on all of that, but the Valiant, they have good coaching, they have really good players, but I don't know if they're ready for Washington's style of aggression. I would like to see the Valiant come out on top in this, but I don't know if they can. I worry about their tank line, and I just, especially going up against Janu and Decay, the way they're playing, I wanted to say Roar, but to Washington's benefit, he's on the bench right now, so we don't have to worry about Roar. It's just, you get into the tanks and DPS players flip-flopping around and stuff like that. I confuse myself sometimes. As many of you know, I have a tendency to do that. Back to the Valiant. I do think the best part of the Valiant is their DPS line. But low-key, Lastro has to play big. I think I said this last week, too. He's a very big component in this team. McGravy also has to be good, whether he's playing Diva or something else. Don't know what they got up their sleeve. Packington's going to have something, but KSP, KSF, and Shax have to be the factors in this. And one of the factors is taking care of Arc and Aimgon is going to be huge for those guys. Keeping Arc the Undying, making sure he dies a couple times. Because on Mercy, which he's going to be playing, he is insanely good. And he's just going to be feeding resources into Decay. As, you know, with damage boost and all that kind of stuff. And then you're going to have Aimgon on the other side doing what he does. I mean, there are times in the matches last week where Aimgon wasn't even healing. He was just nading and absolutely eliminating everybody. I guess he's going by the Jonak book of, if I kill everyone, I don't have to worry about healing my team because everybody's dead. He was playing some of that on Ana. But he's really good on Ana too. He does a lot of healing and all that stuff. I'm just saying there were instances where he just took matters in his own hands. It's that aggression I was saying. And he's enabled too by the way their tank line's playing. I mean, you got Janu playing an insane Roadhog. You got Decay playing a fantastic Zarya, and Stitch murdering everybody with that. Obviously, on Ashe and whatever else, it's going to be hard for the Valiant to counter that, and a lot of that is going to fall on either KSP and Shax or KSF and Shax or KSF and KSP, however they work, whatever hero rotation or map rotation that they have these guys in, they have to be on top of it. And one of the other keys is neutralizing Decay to an extent. They're going to have to keep the damage that he does at like a minimum. So many times he was going into fights and just like nuking everybody because he was at 100 energy. Because he's bubbling the Roadhog, who everybody's focusing on. But you just have to. You have to. I wouldn't be opposed to them just letting Janu kind of do what he does on Roadhog. The thing is when you're using Roadhog as an ult battery and he keeps getting bubbled, you're giving the Zarya free energy, essentially. So, bubble the Roadhog, generally clearing the nades and stuff like that too. It provides a big problem. I didn't think this comp was going to be that great. This team is running it fantastic. There's no love lost between me and the Valiant this season. I'm not saying they're a bad team. They beat my team all the time, so I'm highly annoyed with them. I don't know if I could go with them to get any further right now because Washington's playing so well. I'm going to say Washington 3-1. Valiant take a map. I want to see them win. I don't want to play them again, but I don't necessarily want to play. I don't want my team playing Washington either. That's not really the scenario I'm looking for. So that's going to do it for that match. I got Washington 3-1. Next match up, we'll go to Saturday, where we have Philly taking on the Shock. And we'll go over this match, then we'll go over the fill-in matches, like the matches that are potentially going to happen, real quick before we switch to APAC. San Francisco, Philly, what else can you say about these two teams? They're the two best teams in the region, and they're fighting to go to the grand finals. So I think right now, Philadelphia is the best team in the league, period, bar none. Better than Washington, better than Shanghai, and potentially better than whatever else comes out of APAC. Be it Seoul, Guangzhou, New York. They're the cream right now in the league. They are poised to take this. They have all the players to fit all of the positions at an extremely high level in any kind of meta that they're going to run that's viable right now. San Francisco is going to do what San Francisco does. The kind of the Patriots, they don't look the greatest on paper sometimes. They look shaky, but they still nail down the win. Big plays from big players really is what San Francisco is about. They have great cohesion, great coaching, and the same goes with Philly with coaching. Their coaching staff is great too. I like where they're at right now more than San Francisco, and not by much. This is going to be I don't think this is going to be that return match where we had Philadelphia just dumpstering them. This is going to be a battle. It's going to be a fantastic one to watch. It's the two best teams that have played some decent games. Well, now that I think about it, a decent game. San Francisco 3-0'd them in a regular season match, and Philadelphia 3-0'd San Francisco. And then we had that match in between those two matches. San Francisco came out on top at the Summer Showdown Finals there. I think this is going to be really good, a really, really good match. It's potentially not the last time we're going to see this either in the playoffs. Seeing what San Francisco does, if they continue doing the things that they were doing against Washington and the Valiant and Philadelphia, I'm not worried about at all. I just, after watching them play two matches and just steamrolling with precision, cohesion, great rotations. They were just on it. The both matches. They were ready to go, focused, and I think San Francisco's lost a little bit of that focus, but we'll see if it gets back on track. I think they were a little smug at their pick by picking Washington. Yeah, they beat them, but I just thought they were like, yeah, we're San Francisco, we're not Dallas or Vancouver, they're not going to dumpster us. And then two maps in, they're like, oh shit, they're dumpstering us. They're going to have to play perfect Overwatch to beat Philadelphia. And I'm not saying meta picks or any of that kind of thing. They need to play, all of them need to clutch out to beat Philly right now. Philly is just above and beyond. It doesn't matter who they put in. They're kind of on a shock run right now, like from last year, where they slipped up against Atlanta. We had that C9 that sent them down in the bottom, and they destroyed everybody down there. In this tournament this year, Philly's playing at an elite level like the Shock were -1 C9 last year in the playoffs. They're focused, ready to go, and the Shock need to get that back, whether it's putting certain guys in or subbing guys out. They need to have the right guys in there with the right mentality and just take care of business. They did pretty good work on the Valiant, and I think they can continue it under the right circumstances. I don't know if beating Philly is the right circumstance for that. In fact, I'm going to take Philly 3-2 in this. It's all going to come down to the last map, and I think Philly just clutches it out in the end, gets themselves a big win in a big situation where a lot of people tend to think that they choked, they can't handle it, they're cursed. They're not cursed. They're a great team, and I think they got this. So before we head over to APAC, let's talk about the potential matches and how I see them working out. Okay, so we talked about, and this is in the bottom half. I got the Mayhem and the Justice moving ahead. I don't like this match as far as from a Mayhem fan perspective. They scare me. They're really, really good. I think, though, that the Mayhem can play on that high of a level, even if they're not mirroring them, but they can mirror them to an extent with the Zarya Roadhog situation. They have a guy who can play a really good Roadhog and Gargoyle. I don't know how they're going to work the Zarya side of it. Maybe they have Gargoyle play Zarya and Fate play Roadhog, kind of like we saw Gesture doing. He could have a Gesture level Roadhog. I don't know. I want to say the Mayhem win and move on to the final round of the losers bracket, but right now, and I hope this bites me in the ass, I got to go Justice. I'm taking Justice 3-2, moving into the next match, and they're going to be playing the Shock, and the Shock, for my predictions, the Shock are going to do to them what they did before. They saw it, they conquered it, and now it's just knowing exactly what the Justice are going to do, because they haven't changed, and I'm 90% sure that they're not going to change up that comp the way they've been playing it. So I just think we're going to be in the scenario that we all expected. We're going to have Philly and San Francisco going to the grand finals. So let's move over to APAC now. We have 3 matches, if you count both losers bracket matches. Never mind. So we have 2 matches that are already set. We have Guangzhou taking on New York, and we have Shanghai taking on Seoul. And then the loser of each of those matches plays in the bottom to go to the grand finals, or losers bracket, whichever you want to call it. First match we'll talk about Guangzhou, New York. I think that Guangzhou I think they're kind of done. Here's why. They did not have a grasp on this meta at all. And Seoul demoed them. They just didn't look good. They didn't look like they knew what they were doing. They were like, I don't want to say beat in the spawn room, but kind of were. They didn't have a grasp on the meta. New York has a grasp on what they're doing, which is a lot of dive. Guangzhou, I wanted to see them get further. They still have the potential to do that, but they've had a week to look at things. I really hope they have come up with a good, solid plan going in against New York. But New York is playing better than normal. The Shanghai did beat them pretty bad, and yeah, they beat Chengdu 3-2. But I just think right now they're better than Guangzhou, at least the way they're playing, which is kind of a shame because Guangzhou's had kind of a better season than most people expected. I don't think the month off, or was it 3 weeks off that they had between the end of the Summer Showdown or Countdown Cup, I should say, and the playoffs was good for them. I think they were thriving on, getting cohesion and working really well together. Playing just even those games, if you're not, the meta doesn't matter and all that, you're still working on other aspects of your game. And they just, scrims are scrims, but you're playing against people trying to get wins and whatever. All the cliches. They missed out on all the cliches from that. The experience, the whatnot, what have you. Yeah, so I'm going to go with New York in this one. Kind of handily, I think, too. I think they're going to win 3-1. I think Guangzhou does take a map because they're a really good team. But I think New York is just focused, and they want to prove people wrong. This is a year that everyone's now said that New York is not that great. I think they want to prove a point and get to the grand finals. More so, it's not that they didn't in years past, but I think this is a big factor for them to prove a lot of people wrong. A lot of these guys on this team might not be back next year. You never know the way things are going, and they don't want to be the best team that never was. They want to put a stamp on this is who we are. I just feel that about this team right now. Jonak and Mono and Sabiobi playing really well, and then I want to see more Bianca, but Hot Buzz fine, I guess. But Onimo, it looked good. You can continue on, but I just think New York is going to do some damage here to Guangzhou. Not a complete destruction, but pretty convincing win. I'm going with 3-1. Now the next match to go to the grand finals, we have Shanghai taking on Seoul, who have found new life in the playoffs. Kind of like what, I'm not going to say I said it, but when you have Prophet and Gesture and those guys with championship pedigrees, they do well in these pressure situations. You take my boy Prophet and you tell him the money's on the table. That dude is going to do whatever he can, and boy did he last weekend. Showed us why that he's one of the best, if not the best DPS players in the league. He was doing stuff on things he shouldn't have been doing stuff on, like Farah, just out of his mind. Gesture was crazy good. They just looked phenomenal. Yes, they played one team that had no idea what the meta was going to be and looked terrible in Guangzhou. And then another team that was pretty close second and didn't know what was going on with the meta in Hangzhou. They beat them convincingly. It's not like they squeaked one out. They showed up. They destroyed them. In this match, I give them a shot. I'm never going to count out a team that has Prophet, Gesture, Badosin when he's in there. Now, Creative looked really good this weekend, so we'll see if we continue on that road. But I'm not going to count them out. Shanghai, on the other hand, now here's one of the other reasons why. They didn't look the greatest against New York, but they got the job done against a really good team. That's coaching and elite players and all of that kind of like we were told when we were talking about the Shock. They didn't look the best. They didn't pick New York, so it wasn't the kind of going in a match a little cocky. They might have been going in a little bit cocky, but I just don't feel it with that team. I just think that it took them a minute to get adjusted to the way the meta was working out, and eventually they took over and won the match. Against Seoul, though, I still am going to pick Shanghai, but I think Seoul has a shot. It would not surprise me if Seoul beats them. But in order for that, and this is how I think, too, it's not going to be a map 5 situation because I will take Shanghai in a map 5 all day long. As clutch as Prophet and Gesture and those guys are, I like Shanghai, when you put them up against the wall like that, they just come in swaying. And they don't have that bad tension, that bad doom kind of feeling, this team, or impending doom. They don't seem to get that way. They seem to compartmentalize the way each map went, and this is the map. We have to win this map. Let's go. They've come back in pressure situations before, the down 2-0 or 3-0 on one occasion, and reverse swept. They are just elite. What I want to see from them, I want to see that. I like that's the way they do the Sombra dive, and I think that could work really well against the way the Roadhog comps that the Dynasty are running. I just think that they'll eventually get them. I do think it's going to be a back and forth. Soul is going to take a couple maps in this. I could be greatly overestimating Soul. I don't think so. I know we have some fans out there. Sorry if this is jinxing your team because they played well. I did pick them all weekend last weekend too. So bear that in mind. I was riding on that Soul bandwagon. But this is Soul, so you don't know what's going to happen. I do think they can take a couple maps from the Dragons, but in the end, the better team is gonna win out, in my opinion. Here, I think it's going to be the Dragons coming ahead and finishing up and heading to the grand finals. The final match, the way I see it at least, it's going to be New York and Seoul. I think this is going to be an interesting match if it happens. I have a good feeling about New York and Seoul right now. I think it's going to be a classic match. I think it's going to be a banger. Whatever you want to call it, it's going to be must-see TV. Determine the last team to come out of APAC. My head is telling me New York. My gut is telling me Seoul in this one. New York is going to be my pick, though it's going to be I think it's going to be 3-1, close, maybe a 3-2. We're going to see big plays from the big players in this. I think it's going to be fantastic. Seeing Jonak and Mono Sabiobi going up against Gesture, Prophet, Badosin, Fitz, the whole kind of settling a season 1 argument maybe here with who was better, New York or London. Even though London won, New York was a better team in the regular season, that whole kind of thing. We could have a little settle of this. Yeah, some of the pieces are missing here and there, but it just adds a little spice to it. I am going to go with New York, though. So I think coming out of APAC, we're going to have the Shanghai Dragons and the New York Excelsior. And then the other side in NA, we will have San Francisco and Philadelphia. And they will be clashing starting on the 8th of October. My opinion, of course. It looks nothing like my bracket did because it got destroyed on day 1, and I'm not going to show it. You guys can see it. It should probably look similar to yours, but my final 4 is Philly, San Francisco, Shanghai, and New York. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Everybody on YouTube, thank you very much for all of your support. It is so greatly appreciated. Everybody else out there that's new, thank you very much for tuning in. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody out there, have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you on the next one.